Your mind never shuts up, does it? You replay conversations from 5 years ago. You rehearse disasters that haven't happened yet. You wake up already tense, as if you're being chased by ghosts no one else can see. And even when life is calm, your brain is not. There's always something you didn't do, something that might go wrong, someone who might leave, and you call it being responsible. You say you're just trying to be prepared, but the truth is darker. You've made your mind a prison, and you're the one locking the door. You live in a constant state of preparation. For what? For the moment that never comes. For the peace you keep postponing. You tell yourself that once everything's handled, once they understand you, once you succeed, once nothing can go wrong, then you'll relax. But Machiavelli would have told you, that moment doesn't exist, because your need to control it is what's breaking it. You weren't born like this. You were trained to fear the now, trained to see rest as laziness, trained to believe that anxiety is the price of being a good person. So now you plan tomorrow's conversations in today's shower. You rewrite the past in your head at night. You live everywhere but here, and it's making you sick. People say, just be present, like it's easy. But they don't understand the war inside you. They don't know how loud it gets, how silence feels like danger, how doing nothing makes you feel like you're falling behind. So you keep moving, keep fixing, keep thinking it through, and still, you feel stuck. Here's the truth. You're not just overthinking. You're over-controlling, not the world, but yourself, your emotions, your impulses, your entire presence. And in trying to avoid pain, you've disconnected from life itself, because what you try to control ends up controlling you. But what if the power isn't in doing more? What if the way out is emptiness? In the next part, we'll talk about what it really costs to keep gripping so tightly, not just mentally, but in the places no one sees. Men in general judge more from appearances than from reality. All men have eyes, but few have the gift of penetration. Niccolò Machiavelli. On the outside, you seem functional, maybe even successful. You show up. You do your job. You answer messages, return calls, meet expectations. But if we could penetrate beneath the surface, beyond the image you project, beyond the schedule you hide behind, we'd find a mind that never rests, not because it's awake, but because it's haunted. You live in yesterday's regrets. You rehearse tomorrow's collapse. You smile, but your nervous system is sprinting, always preparing for some invisible emergency. You say, I'm fine, but your chest is a battlefield between memory and imagination. This is the hidden cost of your inner lie. You're not living. You're performing presence while surviving absence. You think being responsible means never letting your guard down, but your guard is killing you. You anticipate betrayal before anyone speaks. You mourn things that haven't even happened yet. You replay wounds like they're sacred, as if remembering them perfectly might finally make them hurt less. It doesn't. It just keeps you stuck. Because the mind that's obsessed with the past is trying to rewrite what it couldn't control. And the mind obsessed with the future is trying to prevent what it's too afraid to face. But here's the Machiavellian twist. The more you try to control your life with your thoughts, the more your thoughts control you. You've built a world in your head where you are always preparing and never arriving. You say you're being careful, but what you're really doing is postponing presence. And that delay has a price. The slow erosion of your joy, your clarity, your real self. You weren't born this way. You became this way. Taught to fear mistakes, taught to over-prepare, taught to believe that your safety lives somewhere in the next achievement, the next fix, the next plan. And so you suffer in silence, not because you're weak, but because the lies you were taught sounded so noble. Be careful. Be good. Don't disappoint. Think ahead. Don't let them see your fear. And in obeying those rules, you lost something sacred, your ability to be here, not as a ghost of who you were, not as a strategist of who you might become, but as the one thing you forgot how to be: present, alive, real. In the third part, we're not going backward into your past. We're going underneath it, into the deeper architecture of why your mind was wired this way to begin with. The wise man does at once what the fool does finally. Niccolò Machiavelli. You think your suffering is personal, but it's not. It's systemic. It's the invisible heritage you carry inside your mind, not from your parents, from civilization itself, because for thousands of years, we've been taught that the mind is a weapon, that control is safety, that fear is intelligence, and that the one who hesitates survives. And so your thoughts race, not because you're weak, but because you were trained by generations of strategy, religion, conquest, scarcity, to never stop calculating. From the moment you were born, the world whispered one thing into your nervous system: don't relax, stay ready, think ahead. And so you did. You learned to overthink instead of feel, to rehearse instead of speak, to scan instead of rest, to perfect instead of live. But here's what no one told you. That voice in your head, that constant buzz, that hyper-vigilant narrator anticipating every outcome, every danger, every rejection, it's not you. It's the software of history running through your brain. Look closer. You inherited the mind of a soldier, even if you never went to war. You inherited the stomach of a starving ancestor, even if your fridge is full. You inherited the posture of someone bracing for exile, even though no one is kicking you out. This isn't personality, it's programming. It's humanity's deepest wound. We didn't evolve for peace. We evolved to survive. And survival didn't favor the present. It favored the anxious, the planners, the ones who looked at a blue sky and still packed for rain. That's why your joy feels fleeting and your dread feels permanent. That's why calm makes you suspicious. That's why you can't sit still without the guilt of wasting time. You are not a person living in a moment. You are a civilization living through a person. Your overthinking is not overthinking. It's historical memory. It's a 10,000-year-old impulse. If I control everything, maybe I'll finally be safe. But you're not safe. You're tired. Exhausted from the war, your mind keeps fighting against reality. Because no matter how much you plan, you can't control the future. No matter how much you regret, you can't rewrite the past. And no matter how tightly you grip your thoughts, they will not protect you from the ache inside your chest. So now you exist in a kind of limbo, never truly present, never truly gone. You are always almost living. And the irony, the more you try to control your life, the more it slips through your hands, because what you try to control controls you. And Machiavelli knew this, not just in politics, but in the soul. You are not free. You are managed by ghosts. Ghosts of empires, ghosts of scarcity, ghosts of vigilance passed down through culture, school, faith, and fear. But here's the rupture. The moment that bends everything. If this wasn't your fault, if this was inherited, then you can stop blaming yourself. And if it was programmed, then maybe it can be unwritten, but you won't do it by planning or thinking harder.
If you feel a connection, hit subscribe and keep exploring with Senthora. Grateful for your support. It goes deeper than you think.
Or analyzing your way out. You'll do it when the illusion breaks, when your mind, so full, so tense, finally collapses under its own weight. And in the silence that follows, you'll feel something you haven't felt in years. Not clarity, not confidence, but space. And maybe, just maybe, that's where your real self has been waiting all along. In part 4, we'll talk about what happens when that wiring finally misfires, when the identity you've leaned on suddenly stops holding. The people are more easily corrupted by luxury than by hardship. Niccolò Machiavelli. You think the enemy is anxiety, or overthinking, or fear, but Machiavelli would tell you otherwise. He would say, no, the enemy is internal governance. Not how you feel, but how your inner world is structured. Because inside you, there isn't just a mind. There's a state, a power dynamic, a system of control, run by a tyrant you've never questioned. That tyrant is your need to control. And like all cunning rulers, it came to power under the guise of protection. It told you, plan ahead and you'll be safe. It whispered, if you anticipate pain, you can avoid it. It promised, perfection will buy you peace. And you, like any citizen of a fear-based regime, obeyed. You learned to betray your instincts to maintain stability. You silenced your needs to avoid inner conflict. You censored your desires in exchange for false security. But Machiavelli taught this: the most dangerous ruler is the one who convinces you they are you. And that's exactly what happened. This inner strategist didn't just influence your mind, it colonized it. It didn't just suggest, it rewrote the laws. And you started living like a loyal subject, mistaking survival for freedom. But now, something shifts, not softly, not spiritually, like a coup. You notice the cracks in the system, not because it collapses, but because you start to think politically. You realize your inner control isn't strength, it's surveillance. Your productivity isn't growth, it's taxation. Your anxiety isn't a flaw, it's a consequence of bad leadership. And the moment you see this, really see it, something radical happens. You stop trying to fix the regime. You start plotting your exit. Letting go isn't surrender, it's defection. It's not that you stop trying, it's that you stop participating in a game designed to make you lose. You stop financing the tyrant with your energy. You stop voting for fear with your attention. You stop abiding by rules written by panic. And suddenly, you remember you don't owe your mind allegiance. You don't owe your thoughts obedience. You don't owe the future your life. This is not a breakdown. It's a political awakening. The old ruler loses its grip, not because you healed, but because you saw the scam. And now, the revolution begins. In the next part, we'll talk about what's left after the collapse, when the noise fades and you finally hear what's been hiding underneath the control. A return to first principles in a republic is sometimes caused by the simple virtues of one man. Niccolò Machiavelli. You would expect liberation to feel like freedom, but it doesn't. Not at first. It feels like confusion, disorientation, a strange quiet inside your body where the orders used to be, because for so long, your every move was governed by anticipation, by performance, by the echo of imagined consequences. And now, the guards are gone, the commands have stopped, but you don't know what to do with your hands. No strategy, no simulation, no self-surveillance, just space. And space, when you've lived in a prison, feels like danger. You feel the urge to retreat, to reinstate the regime, to apologize for being unproductive, to rehearse a future failure just to feel prepared, to tighten the grip again because looseness feels like laziness. But something resists. Something watches this old impulse and doesn't flinch. Something inside you, newly awake, understands. This discomfort is not a threat. It's the withdrawal of obedience. You don't have to do anything with the moment. You just don't have to obey the one who always tried to manage it. You stop intellectualizing every breath. You stop converting every pause into a plan. You stop fearing the what-ifs like they're facts. And without even trying, a new posture begins to emerge. You walk slower, not because you're lost, but because you're no longer rushing towards safety. You speak less, not because you have nothing to say, but because you're no longer narrating your worth. You pause before reacting, not to be polite, but because you're finally listening, not to others, but to yourself. This is not healing. This is inhabiting. You're no longer living as an ambassador of your fear. You are a sovereign state. For the first time, you don't feel like you need to prove your value through stress, shame, or over-preparation. You're not living in reaction. You're living in relation to what's real, what's present, what's true now. And it doesn't feel like bliss. It feels like truth, undeniable, undecorated, unbothered. And you realize this was never about being mindful. This was about becoming unavailable to the regime of control that ruled you. And now that you feel something even more powerful than peace: permission. In part 6, we'll talk about how letting go isn't a mood, it's a motion, and you'll feel what it actually looks like in your body, your voice, your choices. It is much safer to be feared than loved if one must choose. Niccolò Machiavelli. You were trained to believe that letting go would look like collapse, like weakness, like disappearing. But it's not collapse. It's something far quieter, something so simple it feels suspicious. Letting go looks like making tea, without solving the world in your head while the water boils. It looks like writing a message, and not rereading it 4 times to make sure you still sound smart and lovable. It looks like walking into a room, and not shrinking into politeness so no one feels threatened by your presence. Letting go is not dramatic. It's not a grand speech or an emotional high. It's an invisible mutiny, small acts of disobedience against the mind that told you safety lives in performance. Because real power doesn't look like domination. It looks like not needing the outcome to justify your existence. The job interview? You show up prepared, but not rehearsed. The relationship? You offer truth, not perfection. The decision? You make it, not because it's right, but because it aligns with the one you've stopped apologizing for being. This is how letting go becomes unstoppable. Because once you stop trying to control how you're seen, no one can use your image against you. Once you stop negotiating your needs, you start recognizing which rooms were never designed to hear them. Once you stop clutching the idea of how it should go, you start living in how it actually is. And this doesn't make you passive, it makes you precise. You don't give your energy to things that bleed you dry. You don't chase people who are allergic to your boundaries. You don't explain yourself to minds committed to misunderstanding. Letting go means you finally understand. You are not here to be impressive. You are here to be in possession of yourself, even if your hands shake, even if your voice cracks, even if nothing around you says it's okay now. Because letting go was never about getting approval. It was about finally telling the truth, even when no one claps. And in that silence, something unthinkable begins to form. Something that doesn't beg, doesn't perform, doesn't need fixing. It's not confidence. It's not healing. It's something far more dangerous. Self-respect. In the final part, we're not talking about clarity or power anymore. We're talking about what's left when you stop needing either. The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. Niccolò Machiavelli. You expected to feel powerful, but what you feel is quieter than that, almost like walking into a house you didn't know you owned and finding everything just as you left it, untouched, waiting entirely yours. This is not the triumphant return of the hero. This is the quiet, uncomfortable arrival of the actual you. No role, no reward, just the hum of being here without a script. You thought letting go would feel like floating, but it feels more like remembering how to walk barefoot and realizing you've been wearing shoes made of tension for years. This isn't peace as in nothing hurts. It's peace as in nothing owns you anymore. You don't need the applause. You don't need the outcome. You don't need the next step to be clear in order to take it. You're not trying to be better. You're trying to be real. And now that you're here, what do? You breathe, not for calm, for presence. You speak, not for approval, for alignment. You choose, not because you're certain, but because you're allowed. And here's what no one tells you. Letting go won't save you from suffering. It just saves you from suffering in disguise. The disguise of control, the disguise of being liked, the disguise of knowing what you're doing. And in their place, you get something raw, something inconvenient, something alive. This is not clear. It's a contradiction, but it's yours. You're no longer trying to escape yourself. You're trying to endure being yourself. And somehow, that's even braver. So no, this is not the end of a journey. This is the moment you stop asking the world for instructions and start asking your breath where to go next. And if that sounds impossible, good. All real lives begin in impossibility, and all real freedom starts when you stop waiting for it to make sense. And here's the paradox. The moment you stop needing control, you finally become someone who can be trusted with it. Leave one sentence in the comments that your past self needed, and your future self will never forget. And if this video became a turning point, if it reached the part of you no one usually talks to, then subscribe, not just for more videos, but because you've just crossed into a different kind of conversation, and the next one will meet you even deeper. See you there.